Hello, friends, and welcome to I Know I Belong When, a podcast that featured bold voices, curious stories, and authentic impact. I am your host, Christopher Bylone. What does it really mean to belong? Not just to be invited, though to be seen, to be heard, to be needed. I Know I Belong When is more than a podcast. It is a movement, a mirror, a megaphone, one where raw truth meets radical hope. Today's guest is someone who is not just talking about fairness. She is building the tools to make it a reality. Aniela Unguresan is the founder of the EDGE Certified Foundation and the founder and CEO of EDGE Strategy, a Swiss-based tech company that helps organizations around the world measure and move the needle on diversity, fairness, and inclusion. Aniela's journey from international trade to launching the world's leading certification platform for fair, diverse, and inclusive workplaces is rooted in the belief that fairness is not just good ethics, it's innovative business. She has collaborated with global brands, governments, and change makers to create workplaces where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. In this episode, Aniela shares how data, courage, and a clear purpose can transform not just companies, however, lives. If you have ever wondered how fairness can be more than a buzzword, this conversation is for you. Aniela, my friend, welcome. And before we dive in, what is bringing you joy today?
Thank you so much, Christopher. Always very happy to have a very good conversation with you. You are just the person who knows how to hit all the right buttons when it comes to meaningful conversations.
Thank you.
I'm very honored to be here with you today. So to your question, I was like many of us, I was following the UN General Assembly this week, and what brought me a lot of joy and a lot of grounding was to see the intervention by the president of Slovenia, Nataša Pirc-Musar, a female president, addressing the UN General Assembly with a lot of courage, a lot of clarity, and a lot of determination, urging for all of us to stand up, to defend human dignity, to continue pushing for gender equity, to uphold international law and unite nations and people against war, injustice, hunger, and climate destruction. And Christopher, who would have thought some years ago that in 2025, this would be still important unsolved topics, but they are, and seeing leaders and female leaders standing up for these very important topics brings me a lot of joy and energy.
Yeah, that brings me a lot of joy too. Somebody who probably knows the best Beyonce, as she says, who runs the world, girls, right? So I think it's time for us to really kind of understand that we might just need not just a touch, but we need a lot of female leadership to start changing and moving the needle that we have been talking about for years, right? What a great way to lean in to talk about a moment of belonging. So you have been a force for fairness around the world. What's the heartbeat behind your work?
The heartbeat behind the work is really the conviction that each one of us has an extraordinary and unique ability to contribute to the economic value creation in the companies and organizations we work in, and really to contribute solving some of the most complex problems, and by doing so, fostering prosperous and democratic societies. And for all those phenomenal abilities to drive economic growth, social justice, democratic political systems, for all these phenomenal abilities that make all these things possible to be fully used for the benefit of all, respect and fairness are the key ingredients. So that's the heartbeat behind my work.
Of all the years that we have been working together, I knew what that answer was going to be. What drives you to do this work and why you started EDGE. and the needle moving you are trying to do across the world, not just in business, but in society writ large. So, wanted to move into kind of our next segment of the podcast. And this is the one where we talk about names. Our relationship, you have known that I have been somebody who has been a stickler on getting somebody's name correct. For me, that is the first
That's right.
foundation of belonging, right? If you can,
That's right.
that at the very beginning, if you can't say somebody's name correctly, it really starts to erode that knowing that you belong in that conversation. So let's start with your name. How do you connect with it? And what is the story that it carries for you?
Christopher, it's so interesting that you are asking me that question because I love my name. I'm very grateful to my parents, especially my mother in particular, for giving it to me. But of course, it is not a very frequent name. Growing up, I remember very distinctly when people were asking me, so what's your name? And I was saying, my name is Aniela. And people would come back and say, hi, Daniela. Nice to meet you. And I remember the frustration and that came with that, why people cannot get my name right, because it is something that is not so frequent. Am I not pronouncing it well?
Right.
So I got on by being angry and just saying my name and counting till 3 to wait for the reaction and then giving an additional explanation. But then I learned that when I introduce myself, it's better to say, hi, my name is Aniela. It's like Daniela without D. Aniela. And people started to get it right. And there is a beautiful story behind this, because it gave me a powerful lesson that you always need to have a solid shared and known ground with other people in order to
Right.
be able to build anything new on it. That you need to find that common ground, that anchorage point into something that is familiar to people, to take them from there to something that might be new and unknown to them.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think it's something that reminds us is that we also have to give people some grace and to
Right.
understand about how are we setting them up for success. And
That's right.
so, especially when we live in a society where things are so ingrained and we're needing to kind of reteach people about certain philosophies, certain ways of life, if we're not giving them the tools to be successful, then how are they going to be successful? So that's really poignant for you that you gave them a lesson. As you were introducing yourself, you went, okay, it's Aniela, like Daniela, without the D. And now they had no choice but to get your name right,
That's
right? They
right.
couldn't come back with Daniela, like they couldn't, right? And they now have the conscious. That's when we talk about unconscious bias. If people aren't conscious about the biases that they have, how can they be an unbiased person? So this is a microcosm little story about how we're teaching somebody about how to unlearn the biases that they have, because when they hear Anella, they automatically are putting a D in front of it, right? Because that is the social construct of which that has happened. But now you are giving them the information so that they unlearn that piece. Really, really powerful. Thank you.
That's right. And Christopher, maybe in what you said, maybe one other piece that is really important, people are grateful for being given the tools they need to succeed. People want to get names right, want to
Yes.
be able to do the right things. But sometimes it's exactly like you said, they just need the proper tools. They just need the proper guidance. They just need the proper patience for them to get there. And once they are there, they are very grateful for all the support that was given to them to succeed. So I think that this turns out to be such a gratifying moment for everybody involved. We all get at the end of it what we wanted, because we are trying to build something on a common ground to get to a common understanding rather than fighting over differences and fighting over different opinions.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Finding that common ground and where can we meet in the middle. We can't just be standing on opposite sides of the aisle or the street and yelling at each other. We need to come and have a conversation, right? And sit down and figure out how are we having a dialogue with somebody, and getting somebody's name right is going to be the way that we can invite them into that dialogue.
That's right.
So continuing along that line about how do we create moments of belonging, can you take us to a moment when you knew that you belonged and said, yes, I belong here? What was happening at that moment?
I think what was happening was a combination of a certain number of things. First and foremost, there was a common set of values that were shared in that moment of belonging. There was a set of principles, there were a set of beliefs, or a set of shared goals that brought us all together around the table. That is one of the first ingredients. The second ingredient is just like we mentioned before, there was also a shared aspiration for everybody to succeed and for everybody else to empower all the others to succeed in what they were doing. And then the third element is that feeling of belonging. It's also there when there is a sense of shared opportunities for everybody around the table to develop, to be heard, to be listened to, and eventually to be able to offer to everybody around the table a different perspective that might be new or unknown for the others.
Yeah, so talk to me about when that happened for you, when you knew you belonged, wherever that happened along your career journey. What was happening around you? What was that moment that unlocked that for you, either personally or professionally?
Well, I can think of some very specific instances because, of course, I talked about these underlying values, but how they manifest will be very specific based on every single situation. I remember that although it might not look like this, I am an introvert. So as I was building my career and I was building my professional attitude and my professional identity, I used to be quiet in many of the professional meetings. Whenever somebody would turn to me, even if I was not the loudest in the room, and would say, "What do you think, Aniela, about this?" And effectively opening the floor and opening the opportunity for me to speak, rather than, just going with the ones that were willingly manifesting themselves and offering their opinion. That is a moment where you feel you belong. Then it can be about those moments where a really interesting new project, a really interesting new assignment comes along. And you kind of know that it will be a stretch, that you are not yet fully equipped, qualified, experienced to take on that assignment. But then if you don't take it, you will never gain that critical experience. And having somebody who says, well, we know it's a stretch, but I will be your safety net in this project or in this assignment. I will be there to guide you along the way, to ensure that you have access to all the resources that you need to succeed. And when you will make the mistakes that we all inevitably make in the process of learning, I will be there to tell you what went wrong and what do you need to do the next time to ensure you get it right. So I think that these are some very concrete examples of those moments of belonging.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really powerful for people to open the door, invite you at the table, recognize that you might be not the loudest in the room, but your voice added value and wanted to make sure that your voice was included in the conversation, and intentionally made sure to invite you into the conversation, what a powerful thing that has happened. Unfortunately, we know that that doesn't always happen, more often than not, sadly. And that's why we do this work, right? Because we want
Exactly.
people to know that they belong and be able to be intentionally invited to the conversation.
I think that that's also, very practical. I know that, there are many people that are asking themselves, so, how can I be that kind of discussion leader? How can I be that person that makes the others feel like they belong in the room? And things are very simple. And it can start with this: look at who is at the table and make sure that you will always leave the space with the person who might be the quietest in the room, and invite them in. This is a very practical tool. I hope that, um, all our listeners would think next time when they are in a conversation, um, of this very simple gesture of inviting everybody to have an opinion and to participate in the conversation.
Yeah, it's where it's one of the questions I like to ask is who is not at the table. We sometimes look at the table and we look around and we go, okay, everybody's here who needs to be here, right? When we flip that script and we ask the question, who's missing?
Yeah,
That's when we start to recognize what voices are not included in the conversation and then go, well, let's go figure out how to bring them in.
that's right.
So, changing a little bit of the gears right now, talking about that moment of non belonging. We know that happens more often than not. And we all know what it feels like not to belong. Is there a time in your career, professionally, personally, that you knew you just did not belong someplace? And what was that experience like?
Hmm. When I reflect back at my professional career trajectory, when I was in the corporate world, I really had a wonderful workplace cultures, phenomenal bosses. So I really had that fulfilling early start in my career. Of course, I was in a moment of my life where I was exclusively focused on my professional life. But then in my very early 30s, I switched to become an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur in a domain, as you said, Christopher, which is at a very interesting intersection between business and society, between technology and the human aspect of it. And when I switched to be in this position of a female running a tech-enabled solution for workplace fairness, when things started to become a little bit more complicated. And throughout my experiences as an entrepreneur, in talking with investors, there were many, many moments where I was talking about what the company is doing, the track record, the clients we serve, the results that we have obtained. And I could really feel, and sometimes it was more than feeling, it was really said around the table, that the investors and the potential investors that I was meeting were looking at me more through the lens of a risk assessment in saying, what are the kind of questions that we can ask you just to make sure that you did not achieve all this just because you were lucky at a certain moment? And, there is always a risk that you will stop doing what you have done so far, and you will stop delivering the kind of results that you have delivered so far. So I felt that many of the conversations were mostly centered around this risk management perspective. So, you are a little bit of an oxymoron, right? So, workplace fairness with a tech solution. You are a female entrepreneur. You come from, as you said, trading. What is your real motivation? There was a little bit of a puzzling situation. And this risk management, rather than, okay, this sounds like a fantastic idea. How can I help you take this idea to the next level? That was very, very, very rarely the case. And those turned out to be the entrepreneurs that I turned out to work. But in discussing with some of the male entrepreneurs, I clearly see that many of the conversations with the types of entrepreneurs that the traditional investors are used to have in front of them are mostly centered to, this is a phenomenal idea. What can I help you to bring it to the next level? And while traditional investors have non-traditional entrepreneurs in front of them, then they rather tend to kick into the risk management gears rather than into the optimizing values type of gear. So these were the moments, especially in the conversations with investors, where I felt that I did not fully belong.
So what helped you move through that experience? Because you and I have had conversations about this a number of years ago, and I got to, basically be ringside watching you work through this and cheering you on. And it always amazed me, when you talked about the struggles you had and how you worked through it. So what helped you work through that experience, and what was the lesson or the shift that came from this experience?
I think that there are two elements that help you get through this kind of experiences. One is, who are your mentors? Who are those people who in these very difficult moments, they will be by your side with a very objective view of who you are and what you can do and what you cannot do, but that have seen this kind of processes unfolding, that know your motivations, know your sincere goals and aspirations, and they are there to help you navigate those moments. I think that the roles of mentors cannot be valued enough. That's one thing.
That is so true.
The other part of the equation, Christopher, is that you need to deliver on your
Yes,
promises.
that is true.
You need to show people that you can be trusted because you deliver the performance that you committed to. And just very recently, I had a conversation with one of our investors, and we were going through what has happened this year in the business. And then the investor looked at me and said, but what you are saying now makes absolute sense. It's completely aligned with what you have said 5 minutes ago. And I looked at him and I said, well, yes, I am saying the truth. That's why I'm consistent with myself. And then he looked at me and said, oh, yeah, you're right. It is not the norm in many of the conversations that I'm having. So it is also very good that I'm reminded of myself that, consistency and performance and resilience do remain the key ingredients of lasting success that we can be proud of.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we talk about mentors and what mentorship is. I'm grateful for the mentorship you have given to me over the years, and has really guided me through some turbulent times. But it also is about delivering, right? You need to have a very high say-do ratio. If people are going to continue to invest in you and believe in you and give you a chance, you need to continue to produce. So I think that that's so valuable for people to remember, is that, yeah, people are willing to give you a chance, but you also have to show up. And how are you showing up?
Exactly.
So kind of keeping along that, how do you as a leader hold space for others who may be in a place that they don't feel or know that they belong somewhere? And how are you providing them guidance on what those next steps should be?
Those are very tough situations, Christopher. They are very tough situations because, like always, emotions are involved, personal experiences are involved, things that happened in the past to each one of us that left a lasting imprint, that are part of what is happening right now in the present. But I think that, in entering those situations, the first step for me is, first of all, understanding from the point of view of the person that feel that do not belong, what makes them feel that they do not belong. And it is not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing with them at that stage. It is just a matter of leaving the space for them to express what drives that feeling of not belonging.
Mm.
And then once hearing them express and maybe also engaging into the kind of exchange and mirroring, their statements in the most, I would say, compassionate and objective and detached way possible. It is about them. It is not about you. It is about them. So staying out of being defensive, staying out of reacting, it is about them. It is about hearing them, trying to move to the next step. And then to say, well, I understand that you don't feel that you belong here because nobody gives you a chance to clearly express your ideas in meetings, because you feel that your points of view are not valued. So just mirroring back and making them feel that we heard what they said is the root cause of their feeling of non-belonging. And then moving into the third step in saying, well, is there anything that could be said or done right now, given that these are the reasons, this is how you feel, these are the reasons why you feel like that. Is there anything that can be said or done right now to change that? And it doesn't mean that everything is possible. We know there are limitations to everything. Not everything might be the right thing to do at a certain moment. But entering into that dialogue, again, people just want to be heard. People are reasonable. They want to have a common solution. They want to find that common ground. And then they will come up and they will say, these are the kind of things that would help me feel that I belong. If this is said in this way, if this is not said, if this is done differently. And then from that, moving along and saying, well, we can do A and B. We cannot do C right now. What do you think? And then take it.
Yeah, no, that's so important, because it's listening, it's validating what they're experiencing in the moment, and then working together to figure out what are the actions we're going to take to fix the situation. And so I think that those three things are so really important for people to understand, that we have to come up with what the solution is on how we're going to fix this. And that's a great segue into how do we sustain this. So belonging is not just a feeling, it's something we have to nurture. So what helps you keep belonging alive in the work that you do in both your life and your leadership?
Shared values, shared goals, shared joys, and shared pains. That's all it is to it.
Yeah, and you, of all people that are on my list to talk to, you hold a very unique perch in our work that we do in this space, because you get to see across the spectrum of organizations, not just corporate, but governments and nonprofits, and name the sector, and you're seeing it. When you're seeing all these different organizations, what are some of the common actions organizations are taking to sustain a culture of belonging within their organization?
So one of the things that it's so important is to keep giving people a voice. Christopher, you and I, we work together, as you said, for many years, and we know that whenever it comes to asking people questions, running any types of surveys, focus groups, that is not the easiest thing, right? To plan and to implement. We always feel that we are doing too much, that there will be a fatigue. Well, nowadays, before opening the fridge, we need to complete a survey. So people are very used to give their opinion. What they will never get used to is to give an opinion and not being listened to, or not hearing what happened with the opinion that they gave and what are the actions resulting out of that. So I think that one of the things that we do in our work, and it is part of our method, it is part of our approach with Edge, is to give people a voice. Yes, it will reflect their subjective experience. Yes, their lived experience might or might not be aligned with the views of the people running the organization, with the views of their colleagues sitting next to them, with what the data is showing is happening in their organization. But it's a fact. It's a fact of life. Misalignments and differences exist. We cherish them. So give people a voice. Listen to how it feels to work for that particular organization, and never stop doing it. I think that that's one of the first key ingredients. Then we discussed about mentors and the importance of the feedback mechanism. Never give up telling people what they need to hear in order to improve their contribution and their performance in the workplace. Clear, open, respectful feedback. It is critical. And then the third, it's growth opportunities.
It's so powerful. It's really powerful. Okay. This has been an amazing conversation, and we are coming to the end of this conversation. So what I am asking everybody who comes onto the show is to finish the sentence, I know I belong when. So Aniela, would you please finish the sentence for me? I know I belong when.
There are shared values, shared goals, and shared opportunities for growth.
Wow, what a powerful, solid reminder that belonging is not a destination, it's a practice. It's truly a practice, right? And it's also a reminder that it starts with listening. Daniela, thank you so much for this conversation that we've had today. The mentorship that you have shown me over these many years, the confidence that you have given in me. One of the reasons why I feel I have been able to start this, not just this podcast, but start Innovation Unbiased, is a lot of the things you have instilled in me over the years. So know you are part of the success story. And so thank you for being here and being an early guest, and just truly believing in the work that we are doing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Christopher. And, you and me both, right? So we have been on the path that I'm very grateful to you for, of shared learning, of shared values, of shared goals. And I known you for a highly skilled professional that puts passion and knowledge and a lot of grit into everything that you do. So I'm very honored to be part of this journey with you.
Thank you, Aniela. I really appreciate it. Well, friends, this brings us to the end of the episode. And so please follow our show, add a comment of what you are going to do to be a champion of belonging today and tomorrow and into the future. Thank you for listening. Know that your bold, authentic self is welcomed, valued, and loved. Until next time, remember, you belong here.